Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas.
That's me.
On IntellectualRadio.com. Our telephone number is 708-223-8953. We want for you to join in on the conversation as we will be chopping it up tonight on several different matters. Hey, Charles.
Yeah, man. I mean, the big news, I guess, over the past week since we've been around on the air is the debate.
Yes.
The debate at Channel 7, my old professional home. We had the usual debate, but 9 candidates for 90 minutes. Way too many candidates to really get down to any detailed information. At least it wasn't the kind of information that I would have needed to make a decision among 9 people. They simply did not have enough time, in my mind, to really tell us what they're about. Quite frankly, I think I will really, I would really have questions, follow-up questions, when it gets down to a runoff, depending on who those 2 candidates will be.
Well, I think what should happen, even in this leading up to the election, is that there should be, you have 9 candidates. Maybe you need to have 3 different, if you're going to have them, have 3 different debates.
Oh man, how would that work?
Well, you draw straws and have 3 different panels and 3 different debates. Doesn't matter.
Really it matters a lot.
It doesn't matter.
I think it matters how each candidate reacts to each other. I mean, in this debate, they would have 9 answer the question, then they would allow the first speaker to rebut what the other 8 had said. I just thought it was awkward because what about the second speaker? The third? I mean, they weren't able to do a rebuttal. It just seems asymmetrical to me.
Well, it is, but I think that's why you should have, listen, when they had 17 candidates for the presidential
and which was a joke.
It was horrible. It was a joke.
Didn't work.
So what I'm saying is that because all you have is people just hurling insults at each other, not really talking about anything of any substance. But I think here you could have 3 separate debates, 3 of the candidates each, and let them go at it, and then maybe you have a couple of those.
Well, to me, I think if you did that, Lori Lightfoot, the incumbent, would be in one set of candidates. And that wouldn't be fair. I mean, she, who is the incumbent, she has a lot to answer for, meaning her first term in office, and the other candidates wouldn't have a chance to talk to her or respond to her or attack her or whatever. I mean, it's just a lot of people, and in my mind, too many. I'm waiting on the runoff to really ask these people some very serious questions.
Well, I read and I went through them again. They're just narrative. They're not planned. They're not concrete. They're not substantive, well thought out to address solving problems. And I find that to be disturbing, that you don't have a comprehensive plan that someone can read, because even in a debate or forums, which I think are a joke, I don't even attend them. I think that as candidates, you should have been able to put together on your website that somebody can actually go and read the substance of at least the top 3 major issues, that you should be able to give a comprehensive layout of what your approach would be to tackling those issues.
Well, that's, you talk about a plan. I remember what Mike Tyson said about a plan. Everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. I don't look at those plans because they rarely come to fruition. And I look at a candidate's record and what they've done in their life personally, and I come up with the character test. And that gives me an indication of how this person will act under fire, and I make a decision. And if I trust that that they're a good person, that they have the same moral underpinnings and political underpinnings, then that person gets my vote, as opposed to a plan.
Well, you know, I try to refrain from moralizing on anybody because I have come to learn in these 62 years that everybody has got some things in their life that they're not necessarily proud of. And I really don't want to go digging into a person's life, because if we started doing that, then we get what we are running into now, is to just throwing rocks and trying to muddy up somebody for some misstep or some personal shortcoming that they have in their life, simply because they're at a certain plateau or a place where they're just being exposed. I mean, if that was the litmus test for anybody to do anything for the city, for the country, for the community, every one of us would have to pack up our suitcases and go home.
Well, I look at a candidate like Paul Vallis, who had been the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. He had worked in the daily administration. He had been the CEO of public schools, I believe, in New Orleans and Philadelphia. He's got some range in his life. He's been places, done any number of things. You look at a candidate like Willie Wilson, who built a multi-million-dollar international business. Obviously, everything didn't go right for either of those guys all of their lives, but they're successful. I want them to bring some of that success that they've had in life to the office, because they've also dealt with adversity during those years. I want a mayor who can deal with adversity. If there is one complaint about Lori Lightfoot, is that she doesn't deal with adversity well. She will lash out. She'll call people names. She just hasn't done that part of the job very well. In fact, that might be the part of the job that she hasn't done very well. The pandemic was an adversity. The 2020 riots in the city, that was adversity. She didn't handle it well. And I think that is the thing that really has destroyed her as an incumbent. People have seen how she acts under pressure. She couldn't have planned a pandemic or a riot, the George Floyd situation, but she didn't react well to it. I want a candidate who can handle it, who has been around, who's done it. That, to me, is a reason never to vote for someone like Jamal Green, who I think is a fine young man. He has a lot going for him. But does he have the life experience at this point to be the mayor of the nation's third largest city? I think not. He hasn't convinced me of that. And that's why, and that's the kind of thing that's how I would gauge any candidacy, by looking at at what this person has done in their life under fire.
Well, I certainly think that Lori's, she has a problem, her composure. She has a problem maintaining her composure. When you're in the highest office in the city or in a government, it is not your personal possession. So people are asking you questions about decisions that you make, governing decisions that you make, or decisions that you've made that didn't go well, some of the decisions that went well, but people are going to be very critical. One of the things that Harold Washington said, that every citizen has a responsibility to be very critical and to ask questions about everything, not to throw insults, but to critique what is being done, to making sure that the best decisions for the best outcomes for the city of Chicago. So she does not do that very well. She doesn't handle questions very well at all.
You look at a candidate like Chuy Garcia, who has been a neighborhood organizer, who has been an alderman, who has been a state senator, who has been a Cook County commissioner, who is now a United States congressman. It's a wide range of stuff. He's talked to a lot of people and done a lot of things. I don't care what his plan is. I look at his experience and the breadth of it and say, okay, he could be mayor, I suppose. Now let's go a bit deeper and find out more about his plan. But I'm looking at who he is first and where he's been in his life before I make that decision. That's one reason that I look at a candidate like Willie Wilson, who to me is a composite of the black man who has come to Chicago for the past 100 years. Willie is a composite of a black man who came to Chicago during the Great Migration. Think about it. Think about it. He came here from the South, not much education, not much ability with the English language. He's a sharecropper, came here, worked hard, built a business, success story. He's been somewhere in his life. Can he bring some of that to the mayor's office? You feel me?
I hear what you're saying. And the monumental things that he had to overcome personally and persevere despite some areas, lack of education, lack of opportunity, whatever the different challenges. I mean, he actually literally ran away from a
Ran off the plantation.
Plantation. And I admire all of that, and certainly applaud that he has been able to reach a level of access and excess in life, and is very generous with what he has and what he's earned. That doesn't tell me that person necessarily is a person to lead a governing body, which is very different.
Well, and maybe that makes Chuy somebody who needs a closer look, because he has been involved in government. But let's talk for a minute about Brandon Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Johnson, I remember him as a top lieutenant in the Chicago Teachers Union. And at some point, I thought he did a pretty good job in the debate. But he is going to have to convince the voters in the city of Chicago that he would not become mayor and become an agent of the Chicago Teachers Union. People don't want, or a lot of people don't want, the Chicago Teachers Union to be in control of city government. And he will have to explain that's not what he's going to do. I haven't heard him do that yet. And that's one of the questions that I would have asked him as he stood among those 9 candidates. How will you be an independent mayor, independent of the Chicago Teachers Union? They didn't ask. And I found that to be, wait a minute, what do you mean? I thought Chuy Garcia should have been asked, what do you think, Congressman, about having undocumented immigrants vote in city elections? Because this is happening in other parts of the country. They didn't ask that. I thought that's a huge question. I want to see how the Latino candidate, what he thinks about that, as well as all the other candidates. What do they think about that? That's a huge thing. Latinos are the largest minority group in the city of Chicago. And many of them don't vote because they cannot vote. And they are residents, they pay taxes, they 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 live here, they require city services, they go to our schools. Should they be allowed to vote? I would love to hear that. I would love to hear all of these candidates address that issue. And they didn't. That's why I don't think that those debates or that debate I saw last week really wasn't worth the time for me.
Well, debates such as that, remember, it was the Women's League of Voters who actually that they gave credit to for developing the questions.
No, I did those debates every election cycle.
Let me
they
finish.
Did not do that. We did that. The reporters.
Well, that's what they gave them credit for doing. They said that they participated in doing
that.
But what I'm saying is that it should be much broader than that. It should be much broader than that. I think that the reporters should certainly do their homework in terms of talking with more people in the community, talking with more agencies in the community, so that they do ask questions that are direct questions that are directed towards people that live in the city and around the city of Chicago. So I think that when you have one group that are asking all of the questions, they're not going to be able to have a comprehensive line of questions to ask any particular candidate. What I saw last night, because I watched the rebroadcast of the debate, which I was able to sit and watch it very carefully. And I do think that there were some people who performed pretty well, which doesn't say much about whether or not I would support them for mayor, because your performance on a stage when there's a bunch of cameras around and that you're playing to millions of viewers, or that to me is not genuine. What I'm talking about doing is much more genuine when we are sitting in a room where there are no cameras, where there are no people, and you have to deal with, let's talk about the real issues.
But who cares if
right?
There's no cameras? If the people can't see it, what good is it? To answer my question? No, I want you to speak to the voters.
Yeah, but what I want for you to do is to give substance, not to give talking points that you think sound good to the itching ear.
They're all that, and that's what they do. I heard Brandon Johnson do that. He called out the other candidates by saying, all I'm hearing are talking points about hiring more police officers and firing the police superintendent and changing the configuration. All the usual talking points that we hear about. Then he went into his spiel, which is about addressing the root causes of some of the activity. What's causing a lot of young people to get involved in criminal activity is something that you've said on this program. But that's a talking point too, because I've been hearing that for 30, 40 years about how we need to address the root causes of crime and poverty and as it causes crime. But I've heard that for 40 years. I know I've heard it. I've written stories about it. I've said it. I've heard you say it here, but nothing ever gets done. And when Brandon said that, I saw a lot of people saying, oh, here we go again. We're going to solve all the root causes and am I going to fall for that again? And a lot of people are saying, no, you got to stop the crime that stops me, that says I can't walk down to the corner store because somebody might jack me. That's what people are concerned about now. So he complained about talking points as he was doing talking points. And I don't think it helped him at all.
Well, I don't know that it helped or it didn't hurt. But speaking to the Chicago Teachers Union question was raised by Brother Mandine on the Munir Muhammad show yesterday. And he did address that. He said, listen, I'm going to be the mayor of the city of Chicago. I cannot be the mayor for the Chicago Teachers Union or any other union. I have to be the mayor for the city of Chicago, and I have to make sure that we are doing and putting forth the best policies for the city of Chicago. Now, I am a public educator. I was a public educator for 15 years. He says, but it is important that we have a strong public education system. But I am not going to be, and I'm just using your term, an agent for the Chicago Teachers Union. And that's a fair question.
It's a fair question, but he's going to have to answer that question on more than the Munir Muhammad show. He's going to have to do it citywide. I don't know if he can do it in his ads, but if he should make the runoff, believe me, they're going to come for him. Because
and it's a fair question.
It absolutely is a fair question, but it wasn't answered during that debate.
It wasn't
exactly,
asked.
But it was.
Wasn't
and I don't hold him responsible for not asking the question. I hold the reporters responsible and the debate organizers and the League of Women Voters for not having that central point asked of him. Now, they couldn't ask everybody that question because everybody is not involved with the Chicago Teachers Union. That has to be answered by Brandon. But I think in a different format, you're able to follow up and ask that question to that candidate and ask Paul Vallis questions about, hey, man, you were the architect of the relationship between City Hall, the union, and the schools. You were the architect of that relationship. And we see how that is not working today.
Didn't work then.
Right.
It's not working today.
Not working today.
Didn't work in the other
so
areas
we need
where he
to
went
ask
to.
Paul Vallis those questions.
And ask Paul Vallis why there is not, wherever he went to, there's those school systems are suffering after
Same.
He left.
Same.
Those questions,
but they were
need to be
suffering
asked.
before he got there too. But he didn't.
They only
fix
were
them.
worse.
And now
they only were worse
and now he's
after
saying,
he left.
Now he's saying he wants to fix the city of Chicago. Well, there we go again with the whole notion of what have you done in your life. That to me is more important than a plan, because Paul Vallis has what do they say? Has got some splaining to do, just like Brandon.
Well, when you say
got some splaining.
Well, when you
to
say
do.
what have you done in your life relative to public service, and in areas of public service that you have been responsible for, I think that's very fair. We certainly need to know that, and they need to address the outcomes of decisions that they made.
You know, that's the point, man. That would be great. Wouldn't it be great to ask Paul Vallis, where have you succeeded? Where have you accomplished what you set out to accomplish when you took one of these public service jobs? Okay, go for it, Paul. That question was asked in 7 seconds. Answer it.
Or tell us after your service as the CEO for Chicago Public Schools, show us where Chicago Public Schools were better off from your administration.
There you go. And you know, there are questions you can ask. I mean, Chewy's got so much stuff coming up right now. I mean, he's got this Madigan link. You know, that's problematic. I mean, you say the word Madigan in this election, that's like saying Burke in the 2019 election, Ed Burke in the 2019 election, and what the impact just that name had on the dynamic between Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle. And Lori Lightfoot,
if you're going to accuse Chewy, in all fairness, if you're going to accuse him of a Madigan link, you have to accuse every other politician in government of the Madigan link.
Even
every
Willie
other
Wilson?
one, everyone
Not Willie Wilson.
have to be
Willie Wilson
have to be linked. I said only politicians in government. Willie Wilson is a private citizen, but you
everybody who served in
everybody
government.
who was serving in government, you have to because they had to deal with him. He was a politician. He was in a very powerful position. You had to deal with him. So in fairness to that, now, if they're asking or saying that as a congressman, as a commissioner, that you dealt with Mike Madigan, you had to deal with Mike Madigan. That was your job in those positions. Now, if that goes to something else.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
That's great. I think everybody would understand that.
Right.
Because all of them, as you say, anybody who held elective office at some point, if they were doing it a year, 2 years ago, had to deal with Mike Madigan on some level.
Well, so if they want to get to a critical thing now, I am reaching out to him, and I've called Clem Belanoff, and I haven't received a return of phone call because I want to know, and I've been looking, but I haven't found any evidence of him taking money from a red light camera company and then casting a vote.
And you should know.
For a red light camera company. And I want to know if in fact that is true. One, because we supported him when he ran against Rahm, because he vowed to get rid of this system that is disproportionately taxing Black and brown communities. And everybody's being taxed by a system that we're not getting anything for.
Yeah, because there is no detail to that. Now, is that something that now Lori Lightfoot's people put the ad on television? So,
which I think is hypocritical.
But do they know?
You know
what the detail behind whatever the complaint is?
Well, I have reached out to some relationships to help me try to uncover that, because I like to deal with facts and I like to deal with truth. I don't like to just throw mud at people without being able to back it up. Now, if it is true, that's a problem. That's a big problem if it's true. But I'm not counting it as true until it could be verified. And unfortunately, people in politics, Lori Lightfoot, her campaign, they know that 95% of people are not going to go fact check or not going to go and look for proof. They're just going to say, ooh, and they're going to make a determination, which is unfortunate. But I think that it is the responsibility of the rest of us who do have some exposure to media and outlets to find out the truth, because we need to know if people are making decisions, doing one thing and saying another, that we can ask them and call them on it.
What do you think is going to happen to the Black vote in the city during this, I guess, first round? The fact that there are 6 Black candidates running, is it 6 or 7?
There are
9 up there.
7.
7 Black candidates. Given the racial dynamic of Chicago, do you believe that they are going to split the Black vote to the point where it really won't be a factor in the runoff?
No.
You think it'll be a factor?
I listen, because there are 7 people, that doesn't mean that the Black vote is going to be splintered 7 different ways.
Going to be split.
Not to the point that it's going to be significant, because some of those candidates really are going to be embarrassed by the number of people that cast votes for them. They're going to be embarrassed by it. So I think that I don't think that is going to. I don't think that's going to be a fact, because I think that people are going to pay attention, and it's going to boil down to a few people that they're going to be looking at.
Well, I mean, I just look at the city's history, and Harold Washington's election in 1983 was in large part because he was able to command the Black vote, the vast majority of it. Barack Obama,
95% of all black registered voters.
Right,
it's never been done again.
Okay, but Barack Obama won the U.S. Senate primary in 2004 because he was able to corner that Black vote. I mean, the Black vote has a history in the city of Chicago as being basically being fundamental to the success of Black candidates. Now, Lori Lightfoot may have been an exception. I think that she filled her silo, if you will, in 2019 with the LGBTQ block of voters. She did very, very well there. And she did better there than I believe she did in the black community.
Well, she did better. She did obviously she was going to do better there, but she did better in the black community because people were not necessarily voting for Lori; they were voting against Tony
No,
Preckwinkle.
that was the general. I'm talking about how Lori got to the runoff. She got to the runoff by filling up her silo that she campaigned hard on the north side and on the lakefront.
But Tony Preckwinkle was in the runoff as well. She and Tony
right, she was in the
Preckwinkle-
runoff, but Tony Preckwinkle, I think, got more black votes in the first round than Lori Lightfoot got in the first round in 2019. I mean, Tony Preckwinkle was county board president, former fourth ward alderman. She had it going on.
I don't remember the breakdown.
The breakdown was
but
clear. Willie
Tony
Wilson won the black wards.
Yeah, but
in
Tony
2019.
Preckwinkle was hurt in the black community because of the sugar tax.
Absolutely.
And then the cover up, right?
And the Burke stuff
of
hurt
that,
her
of
too.
that.
I mean, she lost the runoff under entirely different circumstances than she lost the general election under entirely different circumstances than she was able to,
Yes.
I guess, win or finish second in the first round.
Well, I voted against Tony Preckwinkle because I thought that one, she was totally dishonest about the sugar tax. Totally dishonest about the sugar tax, and then she told when the desperation came, and then she told the real truth about the sugar tax, and what the sugar tax was to maintain funding for some jobs that were vacant, which was crazy. And she said that there was going to be a $200 million hole in the budget. Well, they were able to balance the budget without raising taxes.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting runoff. This is interesting now, but the runoff.
This will be the first time the runoff won't include the incumbent.
It'll be. I mean, that's a good bet. But it also could be the first time a runoff where the black community will be the difference maker. I mean, the black vote could be the difference maker in a race between, for instance,
it always has been.
No, not always has been. It wasn't that much of a big deal in the midterms. It wasn't. I mean, the reason that the Republicans lost, and I got some personal knowledge about this, they lost because they lost DuPage County in a huge way. They lost DuPage County. My goodness, DuPage County used to be one of the top Republican counties in America. I mean, like top 3. Yeah. And they lost DuPage County, and that killed them.
Suicide is a bad thing. Pardon? Suicide is a, it's a bad thing. Suicide. They committed political suicide.
With what?
With putting the wrong people up.
Oh, you mean like Bailey?
Bailey and people like that.
Bailey wasn't the best candidate in the world. I mean, but he's a good person. And, I stand by that and have no regrets for supporting him because he's a good man.
Well, I'm glad he's a good man going back to wherever he is.
Well, he's still a state senator in Illinois. And hopefully he can continue to do what he does, which is represent his constituency. And I like the guy.
Well, good.
I mean, I think he's a good man.
But no, I think that this mayoral runoff will not include Lori because I think that there are several things that are going to do her in. And one of the things that is going to be significant, is the fact that she campaigned that she would not use the ticketing system, parking tickets, boots, red light camera, speed camera tickets, as a way to balance the budget on the backs of people who were hit the hardest. And she did it on steroids. Worse than Rahm.
Yeah.
She did it on steroids.
She lowered the speed limit.
Well, not the speed limit, the threshold.
The threshold, yeah.
Right? To make sure that she definitely turned most of the roads into toll roads. That's basically what it is. This is a tax that is being placed on the citizens of Chicago, not a safety program. It's a tax.
One thing we did during our last podcast, I did it, you didn't, but I said that early voting would not begin until February 13th. Early voting begins 3 days from now.
January
Thursday.
26th
Yes.
at the superstation.
At the superstation,
Right.
not in the precincts.
Not in the precincts,
but
or not in the
but
ward.
it does in the in the ward.
The ward is
but
the
it
13th.
It will begin this Thursday.
Yes.
What do you think? How soon will you vote?
After I do the briefing, and I really can't tell you how soon I will vote. I will not be voting before the 13th, but I will be voting somewhere before the 28th, because I do want to make an announcement, or at least put some information out there to people who are asking for my thoughts and my opinion on who to support.
Yeah, I won't vote on the. I won't vote until the 13th at the earliest, because I want to see how things shake out. I mean, let's face it. With Madigan's, not Madigan, but the ComEd trial will begin in March. And there's going to be a lot of buildup to that. In fact, there could be more information about, for instance, Congressman Garcia's involvement in the case. Now, he is not indicted. He is not charged with anything, but apparently he was talking to people who were in that circle, or people in that circle of defendants were talking about him. In terms of this appointment that they wanted to make to the ComEd board. So I want to wait to see how things shake out before I cast a ballot.
Well, that trial is not going to start until March.
Right.
But the election is February 28th.
Yeah, but they'll be talking about different aspects of it. I mean, let's face it, this came out the last couple of weeks that he's involved, that he is the unidentified congressman in the indictment. We just found out. So I want to know if are there going to be more leaks? Is there going to be more information that we're going to hear? Is there going to be information about any of the other candidates that we need to hear? I'm just, I wouldn't.
When you say information relative to
anything, I think one of the drawbacks of early voting is that people go out and cast their ballots, as they did in Pennsylvania. Remember, there was early voting in Pennsylvania. Then that guy, John Fetterman, who had the stroke, we find out cannot really speak on his own without being prompted by a video screen. That's important information to have, but we didn't get that information until after early voting had happened in Pennsylvania. And I think people would want to know that before they voted, but they didn't get to know that.
Somebody who, in terms of having a condition and they need some support. I mean, that's been happening.
I don't want to. That would be digressing into some other conversation. But I think early voting, you take a risk. There is a risk with early voting because things can happen after you cast your ballot. That could happen. Hey, I wouldn't have voted that way had I known this or that. I known that.
Look, early voting goes all the way up until the weekend before the election. So people have the opportunity to wait.
Yeah, but
they still have the opportunity to wait.
I'm going to wait. I'm pretty sure I'm going to early vote.
I'm hoping that most people won't go and vote
on Thursday, which is more than a month before the
election.
That's
the downtown.
But I live downtown, so I could easily go. In fact, I voted in that place many times. The super site. Wherever it is.
Well, I'm not going to vote until I have more information and which one of the candidates will be more in line with what I think needs to be done and are willing to commit to that. I know that there's only two. At this point, there's only 2 out of the 9 that I'm considering.
Oh, really?
At this
Which
point,
ones are those?
There's only 2. I'd rather not say the two. I'd rather not say the two. Brandon Johnson, I will say, is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that Brandon Johnson is one of them. I have had conversations with him. I like some of the things that I am hearing from Brandon Johnson. I don't trust Paul Vallis one bit, and but I'm listening. I'm listening to the others. I have very great concerns about some things that I need to know about Chewy. I have some things that I need to know about Chewy
That you might consider voting for.
I
think I heard you. I think I'm hearing you say Brandon and Chewy.
No,
that's what I think I'm hearing you say.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, what are you saying?
I'm just saying that there are some other people that I need to have some more information about. I didn't say that would be Brandon.
Well, Brandon
is one of them.
He's one of them.
He's absolutely one.
Yeah, I don't know about Brandon because of the CTU hook. I got to hear that. I got to hear that explanation because I do not want the Chicago Teachers Union running City Hall. That would be, to me, that would be a dangerous situation. Philosophically, he's a guy who can represent the city. I get that, but he's going to have to convince me that he is not going to be a tool and that the teachers union people are going to be calling the shots. I got to know that. I got to know that that's not going to happen because I think the teachers union should represent the teachers. Absolutely. I'm totally for the fact that they have a union and that they stand up for themselves.
They're going to fight. They're going to fight hard.
They fight hard.
Listen, they've got a president. They've got a president in Stacey Davis Gates, who is very sharp, who is very tenacious, and who will go toe to toe. She will go toe to toe, and listen.
More to life than reading, writing, and arithmetic.
There were people. There were people who. Look, she's much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. She is well versed on the affairs of the city, the county, and the state, for that matter. And she's somebody that was being touted as a possibility to run for governor at one point.
Well, I don't know if she could do governor, but she could certainly do mayor. I mean,
Stacey Davis Gates
could do. She could
be
the
a
brains for it, but I don't know if she's got the politics at this point to run for governor of the state of Illinois. I don't. I think that she needs to run. She needs to run for mayor first, or something first, then take something like that on. I participated in it hasn't aired yet in a documentary regarding CTU and the power that it has that it is now in the city of Chicago, and we examine what that means.
When did the CTU, whatever power or perceived power that it may have, because I remember when, what was her name?
Marilyn
Stewart.
Yeah.
Was Marilyn Stewart back in the 90s?
Yeah, late 90s, early part of the century. That's when a lot of people, I think, you can't remember her name, the woman who was fighting. See, Paul Vallis had a sweetheart deal with the union. He did. And there were no strikes, remember, in the Daley years. He basically tamed the Chicago Teachers Union. And Marilyn Stewart was conversant with City Hall, and they didn't have any issues. No strikes. But there was unrest within the union over that they didn't think the leadership at the time, Stewart and her team, were basically firm enough in their stance to improve education in the city of Chicago. So there were people in the union who basically took Stewart on, and they won eventually. Can't remember. Was it Lynch? Was it what's her last name? Lynch, Deborah Lynch.
I don't.
Yeah, I can't
recall.
remind me
Yeah.
of my. But at any rate, there was a fight, and the more progressive forces within the Union won. And by the time Rahm became the mayor, they were ready for Rahm, and there was a strike. And they since then, I think, have been a power to be reckoned with in the city. And by the time Lori Lightfoot became mayor, I mean, they basically put Lori Lightfoot in her place quickly. That she was going to have to deal with them, and they have become the power. And they have moved beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic, and have now moved toward making. Well, in their minds, they want to basically reform other parts of the city that they believe will help students learn and parents of those students. And it's gone beyond the schools.
Well, and it should.
Well, I
It
mean,
should.
but I don't
Listen,
know.
they're the people who are dealing with the children and the issues that children are encountering every day.
They're
So
dealing
they
with it
should
every day.
have
Well,
they should have some concerns about what is happening existential of the building and the learning environment. Because if those environments are dealt with and are better, then they can concentrate more on teaching and educating.
Well, it's true. But when you have the union in a position where it can make decisions about, say, mental health centers, for
I
instance.
don't know, make decisions, but they certainly should have some
can make
input.
decisions that the mayor and aldermen should be making independent of the Chicago Teachers Union. Then you have, I believe, a problem.
Well, you got to have some.
Taxpayers
You got to have
have
some
an issue
willing. You got to have
with-
some willing aldermen, and you have to have some capable aldermen to be able to have those discussions and come up with those solutions.
When you have contract negotiations, and the teachers want this much money, I want a mayor who's not going to just immediately kowtow to the union. I want a mayor that's going to ask, what do you need the money for? And if we don't have the money, I can't give it to you. We're going to have to do something else. I want a mayor like that. And I don't know that Brandon Johnson can be that. He's got to convince taxpayers in the city, me one of them, that he will be able to advocate for me, the taxpayer, and not for Stacey Davis Gates in the union. I got to have that, or I can't vote for this guy. He's got to convince me of that. That's his cross to bear.
Well, don't all of them have to do that?
No, he has to do it in particular because of his past. See, that's why I don't vote for people on plans.
But wait a minute.
I want to know who you are, where you've been, and in your life, and that will be a bigger factor in my decision than your plan.
Well,
because as I said at the beginning of this, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Well, Paul Vallis, Willie Wilson, who are talking about unleashing police officers and letting them go do their job. What does that mean? Well, you're going to have to. You're going to no. Hold on a second.
You want me to tell you what it means?
No, I don't want you to tell me. I want them to tell me what it means because they're running.
But I'll tell you
office.
what I
No,
think.
I don't want
what I think they're saying.
Yeah, but
I think they're saying there is going to be, under their leadership, there will be a crackdown in the city of Chicago on criminals, people who are doing this stuff, the people who are behind the statistics for carjacking, for armed robbery, for shootings, and et cetera, et cetera. There will be a crackdown on those people. We will not tolerate what they are doing.
do you know how many
what
people
these young people are doing? We will not tolerate that as
Okay.
taxpayers
So that's gonna-
and homeowners,
so that's
or we
gonna-
will move.
So that's going to make you feel good.
Yeah,
gonna
it's
make you
going to make
feel
me
good.
feel better.
But guess
if
what?
the criminals
But
are
guess
going
what?
to jail?
It's
Absolutely.
Not, guess what? It's not going to happen. Paul Valls is talking about we got to bring on more. It takes a year and a half, right? For a police officer to go from application going through an academy to becoming a police officer in the city of Chicago. They're not going to fill 1,600 jobs. And they're not this whole get tough on criminals and this, that, and the other.
Well,
and
we're
not
not-
deal
we're-
and not deal with not deal with the causations of this. Everybody who has held that office going back 35 years have said the same thing. They have said the same thing and have not addressed the real issues and the real causes. Cause and effect. None of them has done it. All they have done is giving strong talking points that make people feel like, okay, I'm going to be secure, when in fact, you're not secure.
One of the things about that Willie was saying, we're not going to chase them like rabbits.
No,
We chase them hunt them down like rabbits, but we're going to hunt them down like criminals. It's going to be difficult. We got to make it difficult.
This
to
is the
be
same
a
guy. This is
criminal
the same person
in Chicago.
This is the same person. This is the same person who went to the Cook County jail, which is one of the most gravest pretrial detention facilities in the country. Even more so than Rikers. They've had more people dying there because they can't afford to pay a $500 or $1,000 bail, waiting for trial for 6 and 7 years. But this is the same person who was going to pay people's bonds, right?
Yeah.
Where was that organizing? And this is where I have issues with, is that you do things that on one hand are helpful, but as opposed to just giving someone a trinket, rather than helping to organize where they don't have to be back in that situation, or we don't have to be back in that situation. I haven't seen that from Willie, and supposedly he's got some good people who understand that around him. I haven't seen anything.
But we're talking about
Of it.
Willie. We're talking about Willie and Paul Vallis, and we've got political leaders in Chicago and Cook County who've been talking about this. Let's go get the causes. Let's get them some jobs and some training programs. We've been hearing that for the last 30, 40 years too.
I know.
And nothing has happened.
We've been hearing all of that for the last 30 or 40 years, and nothing has happened from all of them.
So Brandon Johnson, if he's elected mayor, is suddenly going to launch all of these programs that are going to solve the crime problem. I think not. I think you've got to do both. You've got to do both. You've got to stop the crime that's happening now. Now, the other stuff's going to take you, you got to get the 3rd and 4th graders in the little league, and you got to, give some support to their families and all that. That's going to take 10 years.
Well, listen,
it's going to take it. But you tell me what's going to happen to stop these kids from coming downtown, riding 3 and 4 deep in stolen cars and jacking people. That's got to stop now. NOW. It's got to stop now.
Sounds good, but it's not going to happen.
The
Sounds
CTA,
good, but it's not going to happen.
I will not ride the CTA anymore. I used to ride the CTA all the time.
When's the last time you rode the CTA?
Oh man, I haven't ridden it since before the pandemic because it's gotten too violent. Man, I use CTA all the time. I don't drive. I'm living downtown, man. I'm not going to drive to State Street. I'm not going to drive to shop. I mean, I walk. Or I take the train. When I go to the ball game, man, I'm a huge White Sox fan. And when I go to the ball game, I would take the red line. No way.
Would I get on the red
line? Would I get on the red line and after a night game and take it back to Jackson Street and switch to the blue line? Excuse me.
You know how many?
Excuse me, but hell no.
Do you know how many hundreds of thousands of people and trips that has gone through all of those places that you just said today? yesterday,
And
the day
I
before,
feel
and all
for
that
them.
sort of stuff.
I feel for them because a lot of people have to
Yeah.
leave the South Side, get on the Red Line, go downtown, work at a restaurant, get off at 11 o'clock at night, and get back on the Red Line and ride back to Chatham. That's a tough ride.
What you're talking.
That's a
what you're
tough
talking
ride,
about.
man. Come on.
Willie Wilson.
You would do that?
I did it today.
You,
Willie Wilson,
and you
Paul
made it.
Vallis,
You made it.
Paul Vallis are not going to address that situation
Well,
by
Paul
you,
Vallis
and you're
might
not.
have to. Because
Well,
right
first of
now
all, you're not
he's
going
out
to
front in
do
this
it.
thing.
They're not going to do it by taking the approach that you're suggesting, and that approach only. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Well, we'll see, man. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the election. But I think it is a critical difference. I think that Paul Vallis and Willie Wilson in particular have said they would take a different tact than, let's say, for instance,
What is
Brandon. Huh?
What is
The
that?
tact would be to get tough on the
How-
criminals downtown.
What does that
Man,
mean?
What does it mean? It
Yeah.
means at least restoring
How?
some semblance of order.
How?
By arresting the criminals and punishing them and putting them away. That's how you do it. That's how people have done it for time immemorial.
Yeah, I know. They've been.
You get the criminal and you take him and you remove him from society,
what
proper
they're
society.
doing is profiteering on arresting black men.
Well,
Do you remember the report?
on.
Wait a minute. Hold
Come
on.
on.
Do you remember the report called the $1 Million Block?
I remember that report, yes, and how they have made parts of Austin into the refresh me here.
The
I
million-
remember the $1 Million.
You're the one who
Absolutely.
turned me on to the $1 Million Block.
Absolutely,
And
Okay.
I read it.
it's good one. It's a very
And
good.
it
one.
it is in Austin where they have spent more money, $500 million
on incarceration.
on incarceration
I get it.
rather than dealing with the real socioeconomic
Man,
problems.
I'm down with that. I'm down with that. We
I have
to
$1
do
billion.
that. We
right?
have to do that, but we also have to protect homeowners who are being attacked by armed criminals who are riding into the neighborhoods.
I get all of
And
that,
take-
Charles.
man,
I
I
get
get
all of
that.
that. But
That's
let me
gotta
say,
it's
say-
got to
let
be
me
a
just tell you this.
two-front fight.
It hasn't been. It hasn't been.
It
What it has
isn't,
been,
because right now
what it
the
has
front.
been, we spend $4 billion a year annually arresting, detaining, incarcerating,
I get it.
recycling. That's what we spend. And guess what? That $4 billion is going into the pockets of people who are hustling on the backs of the people
And we need to
from
change
our
that
communities.
dynamic.
So
We
if
need
they
to
want
change it.
then
We
then
need to
they need
change
to
it.
get tough on the causes.
Got it.
Get
And,
tough
and
on that.
legislatively, they can do that.
Well, they need
But
to.
they've also
why
got
haven't they?
to stop.
Why haven't they?
Why haven't they? Because it's too politically entrenched. I get that. But we've got to stop the tip of the spear. We've got to stop people from getting in cars
It's
and
fashionable.
riding, and
it's
riding
fashionable.
around and in the middle of the
It's
night and seeing
fashionable.
people. Now they're doing it in the morning
It's
when they see people
fashionable.
getting ready to go to work.
It's
Can't happen.
fashionable
Gotta
for
stop it.
people to put themselves in their little Brooks Brothers suits and ties and go and sit in these chambers and pass legislation that is making their rich friends fatter on the backs of poor
Need to be
people
stopped. Need to be stopped.
around the city of Chicago, and you're not doing anything to
I'm
it.
with you on that.
They've had decades
I'm with you on
to
that.
do it,
And, they've had
and they have
decades-
chose
That's right.
not to do it
So what? So
to
what
make
sh-
themselves
so what
rich,
should we
which
do?
is why you have people.
Let-
what
let
we
me
should
ask you a
do
question. What should-
Is we should deal
okay,
with
but how do we protect people in their neighborhoods
by making sure by
from
making
these
sure
people
that
who
ma-
are committed to who commit the crimes?
By-
How do
by
we
making
protect the
sure-
people?
by
How do we
making
protect-
sure that the people who are engaged in this kind of activity don't have to be forced
What, you
into
gonna get them jobs?
this sort of
You're
activity.
gonna get them jobs? Is that what it is?
Oh yeah, we're
Job,
gonna
we're gonna train them.
Absolutely.
The 17-year-old who's been out of school for 2 years because of the pandemic, and what he does, his job is to get in the
Well, the
car and
17-year-old
drive to Lincoln Park.
Yeah, the
or to West
17-year-old,
Town,
the 17-year-old
or
is
to
in a household where
neighborhoods
his
in
parents
Chatham,
30
wait
years
for
ago
people to come
didn't
out
have
their
anything.
houses and jack them. What are we supposed to do about that guy? He's going to change once he reads in the paper. Oh, they got a job program now. I'm going to get in that. I'm not going to rob anybody anymore. Come on, Mark. You're smarter than that, man.
No, I'm much smarter. I'm much smarter.
They're not going to do that.
Well, that's not true.
No, come on, Mark. Come on. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that.
How do you know? How do you
know that?
Show me the
because
evidence.
They're criminals,
Show
man.
me the evidence. Well,
there
Charles,
are people
you can sit and label
criminals, and they have to.
You got people. I consider people like Paul Vallis who have destroyed the public system.
But I mean,
that crime.
He should be in jail.
Right? What about that crime?
He should be locked up.
He should be.
Along
with some of his other colleagues.
What Chewy? Should he be locked up?
I don't know. He didn't run the Chicago public school systems and close 50 schools and shut down 50 schools in black neighborhoods. He wasn't a part of that.
He didn't do that.
He wasn't a part of that.
Who did that?
Paul Vallis started it. He's the one who wrote the plan.
I think that was under Rom's administration.
Yeah, it was executed under Rom's.
Yeah.
It was under Rom.
So
this was
did the plan.
This was a part of his plan.
His name is on it.
His name don't have to be on it.
Oh, come on.
His name don't have to be on it. It's all over it,
man. Come on, man.
It's all over it.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. See, you want to let these people off the hook. I'm not letting them off the hook.
Look.
You want to talk about a 17-year-old kid.
Think about it.
You want to talk about a 17-year-old kid.
That's what I'm talking about.
Who is living in a deplorable situation. With parents 30 years ago didn't have anything, and now 30 years later, he doesn't have anything.
Now here's a way, and I don't want to get too far off the subject. Now here's a way to deal with that problem, to deal with the problem you're talking about. The youngsters, because they ain't believe me. I've been to some poor places. I've been to favelas in Central America and in Africa. People around here are not poor; they're poor relative to American standards. They're not poor in the world standards. But check this out. When are black people in affected communities, when are we going to have our young people take care of the children that they bring into this world?
Yeah,
when is that going to start? Do we have a program for that?
When rich white folks, and complicit black folks in these public spaces stop preying on making sure that black communities and parents who have children 80% have the opportunity.
80% of our children
have the opportunity.
80% of our children are growing up in single parent households, and we aren't dealing with it. Our preachers aren't dealing with it. Our public aid programs are not dealing with it.
Not the federal government is dealing with it by incarcerating. Listen, 80. If you take the men who are incarcerated in Illinois. Now, this is a fact.
Okay.
You can go and look it up, right?
Go for it.
Because, they don't count them.
Facts.
They don't count them as a part of the census.
Mm-hmm.
The most felonized people in the country is right here in Chicago. 80%. It would be 80% of them have these drug charges against them in this because of the whole war on drugs. Chicago is ground
so it's a white
zero.
Problem. It's a white folks problem.
Well, he started it.
He started
it.
All the baby mamas and baby daddies and all that, and no two-parent households.
Well, when you've incarcerated, when you've incarcerated,
their problem.
When you've incarcerated,
can we solve that problem?
Yeah, they created it.
They created it. But can't we solve?
They created it.
They created slavery.
They created
but we solved that.
No, they have to. They have to help.
How do we solve?
We don't have the powers. We don't have the powers that they have.
The child that you brought into this world, young man.
Not when you've incarcerated his father.
Deal with it.
When you've incarcerated his father on some low-level drug charges, so now he can no longer go out and get a job because nobody will hire him.
Okay,
absolutely.
But we can't solve the problem. So what do we do? What's the end game here?
I told you what the end game is. First of all, they need to end this phony $1 trillion war on drugs, which is really a war on black men.
Was over, man.
It's not over with.
Drugs, man.
It's not over with.
The drugs in on Mexico. We got the legalized weed.
It's not over.
They got the
not on black men, and they're still arresting.
Some of the cities.
They're still arresting black men and supposedly they have legal, but they're
Well,
still
I'm talking about
arresting.
arresting black
They're
men.
still
who are
arresting
sticking
black
guns in
men
people's faces.
and incarcerating black
that's
men.
what I'm thinking about.
Well,
Well, I think that
maybe if we haven't arrested and incarcerated over 1.2 black men, maybe those black men would be at home so that their 17-year-old has somebody that is there for them.
That's right.
All
That's
right?
who.
So
if you have somebody there for them, I think
you're not going to throw this off
job
on
of
black
dealing
people.
with the crime problem. If you have 2-parent households, you have a much better chance to deal with the crime problem than any kind of programs, as you call it. The program we need.
I don't call them programs. I call them investments. I call them real investments. See, that's what they give.
Okay, here's the other question.
The wealthy tax people. Oh, this is an investment.
So we're going to take the money then from the penal system on the criminal justice system and move it into programs for jobs and.
Why do you have to take it from the criminal?
Because there's money is finite.
The same
you
billions
have
of
so much money.
You got plenty of money.
Oh, you got
we got plenty of money
now.
In this country. Plenty.
Oh, really?
We got plenty of money. So just you have the Republicans' first plan. The House's first plan.
This is about Republicans.
No.
This is about black folks and black folks. Now, so
the Republicans' first plan is not to deal with poverty, not to deal with disinvestment, but let's figure out a way to give $180 billion. The first plan that they came, $180 billion to people who don't need it.
Who's that?
The House. That was their very first. That's their first plan.
War that they're fighting in Ukraine, man. I'm scared of them Russians, man. I ain't scared of the Russians as much as I'm scared of Pee Wee and Ray Ray and them when they start riding. I ain't scared of the Russians.
$180 billion that they.
So maybe they take that money from Ukraine and bring it over here and put it on some of Pee Wee and them.
You're talking about and we ought to be supporting that. We ought to be. We should
be supporting what?
We can do both.
We should be supporting what?
See, that's the fallacy.
We should be supporting the war in Ukraine.
We should be supporting those people defending themselves against somebody like a Vladimir Putin.
Really, man, they got you, boy. They got you, man.
They don't have me.
They got you.
They got you.
You mean to tell me Vladimir
you.
Putin is more important? Stopping Vladimir Putin is more important than me being able to walk to the grocery store once it gets dark.
See,
are you telling me that?
Now you're conflating.
Man, I'm not,
what I'm telling you,
Vladimir Putin, huh? I'm scared of Ray Ray and them riding around in a stolen Kia.
You walk into the store. I guarantee you get in, go home. You walk to the store, you'll get back home.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that don't. They don't make it back home.
You know a lot of people?
I know a lot of people who have been robbed, particularly in like the West Loop area. I know them. They talk about it all the time. People get robbed in front of the church next to my apartment building. They get robbed. People getting robbed.
I've been robbed.
Yeah, but I think that's more important. You getting robbed than Vladimir Putin.
No,
and
the federal government,
Ukraine.
the federal government in this country can do both.
How we doing on time, man? We got a break coming.
Well, in a few minutes.
I'm gonna catch my breath.
All right, we're gonna take it in a few minutes. We'll take a break.
We'll take a break in a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll take a break in a few minutes. But
you got a point
what
to
I'm
make
saying
there.
here is
you make your point, and we take.
What I'm saying here is that I'm not going to conflate the two, because what the country is doing there, they ought to be doing there, supporting that effort there, and supporting the allies out in that part of the world. And what we ought to be doing here is making sure that we're not using resources to continue to bloat the pockets of people like Mike Madigan and his imps and those folks who don't need it, so that you can disenfranchise but invest money on poor people, spending billions of dollars on incarcerating poor people, rather than spending billions of dollars investing in these communities where Black folks in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, where there were great jobs, labor jobs all around these communities that sustained small businesses, and you had one parent working and being able to work an 8-hour shift and come home to be with their families. That's what you need to be focused on here in the city of Chicago, in the state of Illinois.
Got an idea, man. Maybe we can get them job. Maybe we can put them in the army and then go to
No.
Ukraine and fight them Russians,
No.
man.
No,
What do you think?
no need to put him in the army.
I ain't with that. You know, one of the reasons
we don't have to put him in the army.
I
want to do the things. I want to do. I want to do the things that we need to do here. Okay, fine. Well, let's have a war on poverty and impoverished conditions on the south and west sides of Chicago. No, you when?
Man, 1960, man. That was late 60s, man. When I was coming up in the game, that Lyndon Johnson announced the Great Society and the war on poverty.
And Reagan came. Reagan came along. Reagan came along and said, "No, we are going to shift this."
Come on, Reagan. We're going to
shift.
They basically emasculated the black male because they would give the women money to have the babies on their own, would not let the man live in the house, and it started then.
And took all of the commerce and took all of the commerce out. Took all of the commerce out.
Program started by Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society. Don't give that to Reagan. Come on, man. Read some history. That happened in the late 60s.
What program are you talking about?
The Great Society program of Lyndon Johnson, which included welfare programs.
The welfare program, don't even talk to me about that. That's petty cash compared to the trillions of dollars that we give to rich people who don't need it.
Who make weapons.
Please.
A lot of them make weapons and make tanks and they make guns. And those are the people that are getting rich right now.
Well, you're the one who don't you advocate for guns? You're a big advocate. For guns.
But I mean, the government's buying guns. I can buy one personally, but the government is buying plenty of huge weapons to send over there to fight the Russians. The biggest problem I have with that is that these people have nuclear weapons, man. You don't think they'll ever use them? You don't think if their back's against the wall, they won't use them?
Who?
And
who are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Oh, come on,
man,
Charles.
He has more nuclear weapons.
He will not be using. He will not be using a nuclear weapon.
I pray
he will not be using. So let's go. Let's not waste our time talking about something that's not going to happen.
I'll waste some time.
It's not going to happen
about it because he has them.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen.
Put him in a situation. Will he use them? You have to ask that. You have to ask.
No, because he doesn't want to pay the price that he will pay for using it.
What if he got no price? What if there's no price left? What if they have?
Oh, there is a price.
By the neck.
The man was afraid of the flu. You think that he is going to put himself at risk of being blown up?
The flu. Where'd you get that?
Because he is.
Where'd you get that?
He is.
I gotta.
The man lived in isolation. No, the man lived in isolation. He lived in
stuff I haven't read yet. I didn't know about the flu and everything. I didn't know about.
I used the flu.
He's afraid of the flu,
but he was afraid of. He was so afraid of getting sick and dying from COVID that he isolated his entire administration.
So when did that happen?
You didn't pay attention to
that story.
Putin? No,
I didn't think it
the
was
story.
But it has to be a story at some point. Where'd you read?
You didn't pay attention.
Did he call you?
Did you pay attention to Putin? Every time
I pay attention as best I can. I know right now they have a horrific war going on over there, and the United States is right now considering
then you go back and
whether
see
or not
how
to
he conducted himself
even more weapons.
Go and see how he conducted himself during the pandemic. Just go back.
And you've got, where'd you get this from?
Just go Google it.
But where'd you get the information from? Who's the
all
source?
Kinds of news sources reported on
And
Putin.
It was on Google? You got it from MSNBC, I bet.
I got it from a whole bunch of different.
Did MSNBC report that?
I'm pretty sure they did. I'm pretty sure. I don't have MSNBC. I don't have cable.
You have New York Times?
I don't have cable.
Washington Post or anything like that?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I don't.
What do you use?
I don't. I read a whole lot of things.
I do too, but
I
never.
I don't have. You asked me if I have the New York Times, the Washington Post. It's not a story. It's not a story.
It's a report. That's what.
It's not even a report.
We call it a story.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's untrue. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a report. We call it in the news business. We always called it, what's the story? What you got the story? We called it, it's a report. It's a report.
Do you ever watch the News Hour? Do you ever watch the News Hour?
the McNeil Lehrer News Hour,
PBS
that was
News
the one-
Hour.
with Judy Woodruff. Is that?
Well, there's
was
several
it?
of them.
Some like
There's
yeah,
several
some
of
of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
several of them.
watched it. I don't
Yeah.
watch it religiously every day.
Well,
No.
maybe you should
mean,
you should
well,
watch.
I got a lot of stuff
more
that
of
I
them.
do watch,
Yeah.
but I don't watch
Well,
it
what do you watch?
every day.
You watch ABC
Oh,
News?
Man, I watch ABC News.
Do you watch CBS News?
I'll watch one or the other because they generally are on the same time. They only strip shows. That's appointment viewing, and I can't always be in front of the television set.
Yeah, but you
at
could always go
5:30.
back and watch.
You can
them.
always go back and watch it, and that's what I do. I go back and
So
forth
I watch a lot of
between.
these.
I go back and forth between Fox News and CNN News and MSNBC. All of those tend to get on my last nerve because everything is about the narrative. There's nothing about, you can't be sure that you're getting the facts. Like right now, Fox is going nuts over the fact that they're finding all these classified documents in Biden's house and in his personal offices. They're going crazy with that as if the world is going to end.
Yeah,
But
because
it's the same
it's
way.
a whole gotcha
But
kind
it's
of
the
thing.
same way
It's a whole kinda
MSNBC
gotcha
and
kinda thing.
CNN went crazy over Donald Trump colluding with the Russians. What happened to that, by the way? He colluded with the Russians and they didn't confirm it, or they didn't. What happened? Anyway, they went crazy with that. The way Fox is going crazy now with this business about the classified documents. MSNBC is totally given up any semblance of neutrality. They have a narrative that they use, which is similar to CNN's narrative, but it's all, I don't know what to believe. So I read a lot of Twitter, believe it or not, because it's unfiltered at Twitter because you get the newsmaker saying it. This is what he or she said. So I'd rather take that than having somebody like Joy Reid or Tucker Carlson interpret it for me. I would rather get it directly from the source. If Elon Musk said it, he tweeted it. So that's what Elon Musk thinks.
Well, I watch a lot of PBS NewsHour because they put the information out, not one way or the other. They put the information out, and you can go back and you can read it, you can research it, and you can get and draw a conclusion to the facts.
Let me ask you a question. Who do you like locally in terms of the news?
I watch them all. I watch ABC, I watch CBS, I watch NBC. I don't watch Fox because I think that they are.
You mean the local Fox?
The local Fox.
I think they do a pretty good job. I think Mike Flannery does. Having been a
Mike
political
Flannery
reporter,
used to be. Mike Flannery used to be really.
I used to
good.
be in the mix. To be in the mix. Let's hear me out. Mike Flannery was a competitor. He worked at Channel 2 as a political reporter. Right. Then he went to Fox. Man, Mike Flannery used to get on my last nerve because he would go to the press conference. He would start asking a question. It would take him 30, 45 seconds to ask the question. Man, he got on my last nerve. But since I retired, I watch Mike Flannery and I watch his program on Sunday morning, the Flannery on Fire or whatever they call it. Mike Flannery is doing a really good job.
Maybe he's matured.
Well, maybe he has, but I think he is the only one, I think at this point, who really has an understanding of all these different levels of government.
Chicago government.
Sure. Chicago government. I mean, I have to give it up.
He's probably the most tenured. He's probably the most tenured.
Job, huh?
He's probably the most tenured reporter right now in terms of politics.
Marianne Ahern's been around and a long time.
Yeah, but
they don't.
Marianne Ahern is not as she doesn't have the kind of depth that a Mike Flannery has.
But she does. They don't give her the chance to do it.
Or a Carol Marine.
Well, she's gone now.
Right. I know
but they never gave Marianne the same gravitas as Carol Marine.
And I like Marianne Ahern, by the way.
Marianne does a good job, but Mike Flannery, I think, is he does a real good job because when he gets people up for just a half an hour, he has a half an hour, but he will go immediately to the question.
No, I've like I said, I've always liked in terms. Now, you may not have liked some of his, reporter approach.
Well, because he was my
of that
competitor,
sort.
and I
Yeah,
had
of
to get it,
course. But in terms of his substance, of giving you the information and making it, relate and understandable, I always like that. I just don't watch a lot of Fox.
But when you are a reporter and you're out there in the middle of it every day, you're not watching the competition. You're really not watching them because you don't have time.
You don't have time.
You don't have time
You got to do
watch
your
them.
work.
You do your work.
If
and
you're an
then
effective
have
reporter.
you have your own brand
Yeah.
of information, and people know that. For instance, they know that I would go out and seek out Black analysts. I mean,
Hey,
I
listen,
can
I got
honestly say
relationships with reporters.
I made a difference in that regard, that I would seek out, for instance, Del Marie Cobb. When Mays Jackson was a lobbyist, I would interview Mays. And these people ultimately became, regulars on other stations. And I think that
Del
was
Marie Cobb is very sharp,
very sharp,
very bright.
very sharp, very bright.
She's somebody that I rely on
She's
for
very
some
bright,
guidance and direction and information.
And she would bring a point of view, without a doubt. I mean, she's a hardcore, partisan, which I understood. But I would always put her in the
What does that mean?
Well, she's a Democrat. She's
So
a
am I.
hardcore Democrat, huh?
So am I.
But when I'm a reporter, man, I talk
So
to
what does that mean,
Republicans. And what does it mean?
Yeah.
It means a lot, because you're talking about political affairs.
Well, wait a minute. You
can't-
just talked about two different things.
No.
Now, as a reporter,
As a
and Del
reporter, I
Marie
sought
Cobb as a
out
Democrat.
people. I sought out people on Democrats and Republicans. I sought out people on the left, people on the right.
You were supposed to.
Exactly. But that's when people thought that while I was working, a lot of people thought that I was a liberal Democrat.
Well, Charles, you fed into a little bit of that.
That?
You fed into I don't know about liberal, but you fed into that a little bit during the whole Rahm Emanuel period.
What do you mean, though?
I mean, you almost became an advocate for Rahm Emanuel.
Really?
Yes.
Well, okay, but check it out. The thing is, I would let him say what he had to say, but at the same time, I could go to I knew people at the Illinois Policy Institute.
Should.
Exactly, but I knew them well, and they knew me well.
Yeah, but
and they knew that I wasn't.
Who's saying that you shouldn't do that?
Nobody's saying I couldn't do it, but over
or
the
you
last.
Shouldn't.
Let me explain something to you. Only I would know. During the last 4 or 5 months of my life, people expressed some surprise that I would support a Republican candidate for governor, an absolute conservative for governor. I don't have any problem with that. Why would I have a problem with that? A lot of people on the right understand who I have been for many, many years, and they only when I did that. How are you doing it? You must be doing it only for the money. Oh no, man! I can go to the Illinois Policy Institute and I know everybody by the first name, because I've been around for the last 15 years over there, and I've known Dan Proft, who ran the People Who Play by the Rules PAC. I've known him for 25 years. I mean, they know me. They know what I think. I have informal breakfasts with these people, so they weren't surprised at all. But a lot of people on the left. And I think a lot of it had to do is because I'm Black. They think that because you're Black, you got to be down with the Democrat cause. I'm not. I mean, I'm Black, but I'm not. Don't assume anything.
Well, you
about
were
me.
you were when Rahm Emanuel was running.
You thought that I was biased toward Rahm.
Well, you said as much.
How?
You said as much. You remember the time when you were moderating, or I guess you would call it moderating or facilitating out at Chicago State?
Chicago State. Oh, I remember that. And a lot of people, for some reason, took that the wrong way, but that's their problem, not mine. I had another situation where I was at the DuSable Museum.
Wait, hold on. Let's not go so fast. What do you mean took it the wrong way?
Well, they
took what the wrong way?
Because I told people to stop shouting at Rahm and to let him
That's
speak.
not what you said.
That's what I said.
No, it's
That's
not
what
what you
I
said.
meant. Look,
What
I
you
can't
s-
remember.
I'm telling you what
If
you
can
said.
remember
What you
detail
said.
of what I said.
I
you're
can
better than
because I called you on it. I called you on it.
But I don't remember that.
I
But
called you
go
on
ahead.
it when you stood up because I found it to be out of place. When you stood up and said, "Listen, I'm not going to have you all talking to my mayor
Right.
like that."
Disrespectfully. And
You
I
know,
meant that. I absolutely meant that. And I absolutely meant that and will stand by that. Do not regret saying that. I do not regret anything that I have done politically because that is what I
but
believe.
you
Now,
were
people want
a
to-
reporter at the
people-
time.
Exactly. He
You
was
were a
my
reporter.
mayor. He was the mayor of the city of Chicago, and he deserved that respect.
Well,
I'm not going to have a
maybe
crowd catcalling anybody. I don't care who it was. I'm not going to do that. That's my professional reputation
But
on the
that
line.
is a
I am
part
the
of the
moderator.
process. Nobody-
and I will moderate.
Listen, he
didn't deserve it?
disrespected.
He didn't deserve respect?
Did the black community deserve respect
did-
from him?
Did he?
Did the black
deserve
community
respect?
deserve
He-
respect from him?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
they didn't get it.
What do you mean?
They didn't
How?
get it.
What did he do at that point? At that point, what did he do?
By then,
I mean, I don't know.
50
I mean,
schools
I don't,
in the black community were closed, and he
so
didn't even.
I was
he
supposed to
didn't even-
become an advocate
No,
the other way.
I'm just
No.
telling you.
So I'm telling you.
I'm
do
telling you
not-
what people
look,
perceived you
Mark,
in terms of
if
how
you're-
you addressed that
That's
situation.
fine. And I'm glad they perceive. Now they know for a fact by watching this podcast where I'm coming from. I mean, I have. I'm conservative. I
Whatever
can't
that
help
means.
What does it
Whatever
mean?
that means.
It means that I take many positions that are opposite of yours.
That's not what conservative means.
Okay. What does it mean?
Tell me.
What
me.
does it mean?
Just because you take a different position
Well,
than
I mean,
mine
that's
doesn't
the
mean
way
that
I can
you're
describe
a
it.
conservative.
That's the way I can.
What
describe
does it
let
mean
me-
to
let
be
me-
a
okay,
conservative?
I'll put it this way. And listen closely, am not a Democrat.
Are you a Republican?
No. I'm
Okay.
an independent black man. That's what I am. And I can make my own decisions without having
So
people
can
tell me
people?
what I'm supposed to do.
So you don't think? Wait a minute. Hold on. So you think that because somebody is a Republican or a Democrat that they are doing what somebody else is telling them to do, and they're not
for sure.
They're not
Black
independent.
people? Oh yeah.
I'm a
Black
Democrat.
people,
I'm a
look at
Democrat.
look at your
But
community,
no
man.
Democrat tells me what to do.
But they don't tell you.
They don't
what
tell
to
me
do,
what to do.
But they are.
They don't tell me who to
directing-
support.
They are the only people in charge in your community as elected officials. And look at your
And
community.
I don't agree with
And
many
look at
of
your
them.
Community.
I don't agree with many of
either.
them.
I don't agree with them.
I don't
either.
agree.
I'm an
And I hold
independent, man.
their
I
feet
was
to
an
the
independent.
fire.
I was an independent who I said, as I said earlier, have talked to people on all sides of the political spectrum. Right now, I agree. For instance, we talked about it briefly. I agree that some of the things that Republicans talk about now are things I'm concerned about. Okay, I'm concerned
What about
no,
they're
listen,
going to do?
listen. They are things that I'm concerned about
Let's
more
take this
so
break.
than what Democrats
Let's take
talk
this
about.
break. Let's take this break, and then you can come back and elaborate on that a
Okay,
little
good.
bit more. All right, we're going to take a break on this Monday night edition of the People Show, chopping it up with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas right here on Intellectual Radio. We'll be back with your phone calls in just a moment. We are back. Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas, and the final segment of this Monday night's edition of the People Show. Our telephone number is 708-223-8953. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, we certainly like to hear your perspective. Now, before we went to the break, you were saying that there were some issues.
There are issues
that are important to you,
nationally in
that
particular.
are
Issues right
concerning.
now that the Republican Party is talking about that interest me more than issues that the Democratic Party
like
is talking about. For instance, the Republicans talk a lot about family values. I am a firm believer that family values are important. Now, what a Republican says is family values and what a black person says are family values are two different things. But I believe that since they're having a conversation about family values, I want to be part of that conversation because I think black people.
You're talking about legislators.
No, I'm talking about a party's conversations, what they call the issues. They say that family values have been an issue. I believe.
What are they doing about it?
But Mark, you're interrupting me. You wanted me to explain what I'm doing, and you won't let me do it.
All right, go ahead.
Let me do it. You wanted an explanation. You want it? You cool?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's something that an issue that black people have to confront at some point. We have to confront our family structure. And if you, Mr. Republican, are truly interested in family values, then you can help me in the black community deal with this issue. Because I think it's an important issue where our young people are not raising generations of children that they have, that there's too many baby mamas and baby daddies. 80% of our children are being raised in single parent households. We as a community need to address that. And family values is something I like to talk about. Now, another issue. I think there are elements in the Republican Party right now who oppose the increased U.S. involvement in this war in Ukraine. The only ones who are really critical of it are Republicans. And I would join with them because I think that is not only a dangerous situation, it is taking away from issues you talked about that could be dealt with in this country. We don't have the resources to do it all. And lastly, I think the border is a huge issue that we have to deal with at some point, because a lot of the jobs that people are coming into the country, we as black people need those jobs too, even if we don't recognize it immediately. The people coming across the border are carpenters, they are plumbers, they are roofers. These aren't just peasants from farming countries. These are people that do jobs, and they're going to do great jobs when they get here. They're going to compete for work when they get here. We as Black people have to understand that we need those jobs too. And we can't allow resources that this country is spending. They're putting people up in $500 a night hotels in New York City now who are migrants. Where are those resources? We've already talked tonight about resources, investments, as you call them, needed in our communities. Well, a lot of these investments now are being diverted to the, 5 million people who have come into the country since Joe Biden has been president. That's an issue I think that Black people have to be concerned about, let alone the fact that we are going to be replaced. We are being replaced as a voting bloc in this country and in this city and in this state. Those are issues that I find more important. I see the president he is involved in a lot of it's politics over sexual orientation and such. I mean, I hear the Democrats talking about that kind of thing a lot. I don't care about that, quite frankly. That's not one of my issues. That's not something that I'm concerned about. And so right now, I see the Republican Party talking about some issues that I want to be part of that conversation and not the conversation that the Democrats are having, which generally is about Donald Trump. They talk about Donald Trump a lot. And to me, as I've said before on this program, I don't support Donald Trump running for president again in 2024. I'd like to see somebody else because Donald Trump is a distraction. He has become a distraction. And so I'm a little bit, I have my own view of politics and where I belong in it. And when it comes to, and finally, I'll just make this point at the end, and then you can give me a longer than usual response. The fact that we in this area have become, we just knee-jerk vote for Democrats and we get nothing in return. Nothing. And at some point, we're going to have to stop doing that. And that's what last fall was about for me. You can't tell me that Darren Bailey was some kind of racist Klansman extremist when he's not. He's a Christian farmer. That's what he is. I try to be a Christian. He is a Christian farmer. He impressed me with that part of him. And that's why I trusted him, as I said in commercials, because he and I share a common faith. And I don't see where the Democratic Party is doing anything for Black people in particular. And that's why I will oppose it. And I would certainly hope that in a couple of years from now that somebody else, if not me, goes forward and says, no, I'm going to do it a different way this time, just to make the point. And I think I made a point, and I have no regrets about anything I've done politically, not 10 years ago with Rahm Emanuel or 5 months ago with Darren Bailey. That's where I am. You're on.
Well, I'm result oriented. I want to see outcomes. I don't care about some label. I don't see a single solitary policy, nothing that the Republicans of today or even yesterday have offered up, one policy to do something about the inequities that exist in the Black communities. They're just not the option. Democrats certainly have a lot of work to do, but the Republicans today are not the option. All they do is have conversation. They haven't shown or demonstrated one iota, not one iota of a policy to deal with the inequities of Black people. Not one. all of the policies that they propose are to help a preferential few of people of the NRA, of very wealthy people that are their political donors. Not saying that Democrats haven't done the same thing, but I can look at policies that the Democrats have passed, thanks to help from the Republicans, that local communities, that we need to be making sure that the $17 billion that we're going to be getting, $18 billion that we're going to be getting to Illinois, that those monies can be utilized to mitigate environmental problems that exist out on spaces like the old U.S. Steel site, that we can acquire that land, redevelop that land, and bring in thousands of career-paying jobs that we can employ people from our communities to restabilize our communities and restabilize businesses and build our business districts back where we had strong business districts on the south and west sides of Chicago. Republicans have not offered one iota of a plan or a policy to address those kinds of inequities. So I don't give a rat's patootie about someone's label that they call themselves. I just know that the Democrats are not perfect. The Republicans are not the option because they haven't been able to offer not one, including Darren Bailey and that group. Not one.
You mentioned the Southworks project. I remember when Sandy
The
Jackson,
Southworks,
the one that the South. You mentioned
the U.S. Steel.
U.S. Steel.
You're talking about the lake. It was the lakeside.
I remember Sandy Jackson was talking about that. What, but 10?
No.
15
Let me
ago?
give you some clarity because I have some
But
strong
what happened
insight
to that?
I'm going to tell you because I worked on it.
What have they
I worked on
done?
it.
What have the Democrats done?
Hold on a
for
second.
you?
Hold
What have they done for Black people here?
First of all, Sandy Jackson and Congressman Jackson, along with the 10th Ward Alderman, who I forget his name, that was just before Garza, and the developer, it'll come to me, that put in $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
We were having organizing meetings once a month. We were having organizing meetings, putting forth a plan that William Beavers sat on for 20 years, wouldn't do anything.
He's a Republican, right?
No, he's not.
William Beavers?
No, he's not.
What is he?
I don't know what he is.
William Beavers?
I don't know what he is.
Was he a Democrat or a Republican?
He was a Democrat.
Exactly.
He was a Democrat.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Exactly. Hold on a second. Let me finish. Let me finish. Sandy Jackson was not a Democrat. Sandy Jackson was an independent.
Well, whatever. But,
Well,
her husband was a Democrat.
Since you're on those labels.
Well, I'm just saying
Since you're
that
on
the
those
Democratic
labels,
Party hadn't done anything. That's
I'm not talking about a party, Charles. You're talking about a party. You keep referring to a party.
Yeah, because
I'm talking
they're all
about
Democrats.
I'm talking about
And
people.
everybody votes for Democrats around here, man. That's what
Republicans haven't done anything.
But they haven't been any Republicans.
They haven't done anything.
There haven't been any Republicans, man. They haven't done anything because they haven't been elected to anything.
Well, go find someone that brings forth a good plan. You haven't found one.
My brother.
Not Darren Bailey.
My brother. I'm working on it.
Not Darren Bailey.
I'm working on
Darren Bailey didn't have a plan.
I worked with Darren Bailey. He got mollywopped. But
you know why he got mollywopped?
Something.
Because he didn't have a plan.
But let
me go back
to check it out.
Let me go back.
I'm working on it for you.
You work on your thing.
I'm working.
You work on it. But let me just tell you about what we were doing with McCaffrey, the developer that was going to.
Yep.
We had signed contracts with Macy's, signed contracts with the Cheesecake Factory, and we were bringing in some industries that were going to build some manufacturing over there. We were going to build in the first phase, there was going to be 15,000 homes there. We were working with Black folks we were getting them ready to make sure that they would be ready to participate in the development of that, because it's a 30-year project. It was not some 4 or 5 year project. It's a 30-year project, multi-billion-dollar project. That guess what? Mayor Rahm Emanuel, your mayor, would not even so much as come to a meeting with a developer who was willing to put millions of dollars into the development over there. What they did instead of what they did. But
you mentioned Rahm.
But hold on a second.
What party is Rahm part? What party is he with? Now, is he? What,
I don't know.
party is
Let
Rahm
me tell
with?
you something. I don't know who Rahm Emanuel was with. I don't know who he was with. I don't know who Rahm Emanuel was with. But let me just tell you about what Sandy Jackson and Congressman Jackson and the 10th Ward.
Congressman Jackson,
Alderman.
He's a Republican too.
Alderman.
Is he?
No, he was a Democrat.
Okay, got it.
Thank
Keep going.
Because no Republican would do this for black people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? No Republican would even think to do it. Yeah. So thank goodness for these.
Thank goodness
Democrats,
they weren't elected.
Right? So, there would be no Republicans that would even want to do anything for black people.
Really? You know that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You haven't shown me any yet.
Why? And none's been elected.
But you haven't shown me any. You haven't shown me any.
Keep going with the story, man. Keep going with the story.
So,
because I want to get to
what
happened was.
What happened was Sandy Jackson, Congressman Jackson, both ended up, unfortunately, running into some indictments for some
there's a lot of that going
tax stuff that a whole bunch of other people got slapped on the wrist for, right? That were Republicans in this state. Did the exact same thing. They got slapped on it. The young man who was elected and it.
Which one was that?
That I can't even remember his name.
Elected around here?
In the General Assembly.
From around here?
Yeah.
From Chicago? Cook County?
I don't know if he was in Chicago.
That's all I was
talking
about.
I'm just telling you.
I was talking about Cook County and Chicago. I mean,
I can't remember.
Keep going, man. Tell me what happened.
Sandy Jackson and Congressman Jackson, when they got indicted and criminally charged, that the next person who came, which is weak as water, and the mayor, Rahm Emanuel, never gave McCaffrey an audience. Wouldn't even meet with the man to continue developing that project. Wouldn't even meet with them.
Rahm had his issues certainly with, but again, he was part of that whole Democrat cabal that has done so much, and I mean so much being not much for black people in Chicago since I have lived here, certainly, and it seems to be getting worse. I don't see anything to continue to make me want to continue to work. Well, I never worked with them, but I can see what's happening. I look at outcomes, and outcomes have not been good. And maybe it's not the Republican Party. Maybe it's the Green Party. Maybe it's the new Black People's Party. I don't know. But it's something other than what's been going on for the past 35 years that doesn't seem at all responsive to the black community in the city of Chicago, or for that matter, in all of Cook County. It just doesn't seem as though, and now we're finding out that black people are soon to be, at least in the city, maybe the 4th or 5th largest political block, if you want to call it that. You've got Latinos, number 1 in the city.
Latinos they're not the largest block.
Wait a minute, what census are you reading?
Block. They are the largest. They may have the largest number of people, but they don't have the largest number.
Voting. I'm talking about people. I'm talking about people. Yeah. They have the largest number of people. Whites are probably next. Asians are coming up fast, and LGBTQ are a political bloc now, and they certainly are presenting themselves as such. So you could be 4th or 5th in moving forward. And in the city, at least. So I think it calls for new strategies and new coalitions and new ways to get along with people.
Well, I think the
And,
new,
you
the
know,
new
I
coalition
don't
for black
write
folks.
anybody off. I don't, you know, the salvation for black people in this city could very well be people who call themselves Democrats. Since you don't like to talk about Democratic Party, it could very well be Democrats, but they have to be forced to deal with us. We
Well,
have
not-
to
but-
use
but-
a
but-
lever at some point. And if it takes somebody to go out there and say, no, we ain't vote for you this time. We ain't going to do it this time. Okay. And maybe we still do it, but we have to let them know that, yes, we have a choice, and you have to come at us correctly, or we will go in another direction. I'm one. I went in another direction.
Yeah, that's
And I will go again.
Yeah, but
I will go again.
but that
just to
strategy
make
is a
the
failure.
point.
That
And maybe
strategy is a
somebody else
failure.
will go with me next time.
That strategy is a
Maybe-
failure.
Well,
That
failure?
strategy
Well,
is a
that's
failure.
But I tell
The
you,
strategy
what-
that is not a failure.
the strategy that most black people in Chicago and Cook County are taking is also a failure. And
I don't disagree
failure.
with that. I don't
Thank you.
disagree with that.
Thank you. Then we're on the
But-
same page.
Well, we're on the same page
just
about
doing something
strategy. All I'm saying is, well, what you're not doing anything that is going to be
That's an
productive.
opinion.
What? No, it's actually going to
No,
be
that's an
a
opinion.
fact.
I got opinions too.
Yeah,
I got them
but
all
I'm
the
just
time.
saying.
You got
What
them.
we have
I
to
got 'em.
do, what we have to do as a black community is to organize ourselves to where we can dictate to whomever it is. Whomever it is. Let's just take labels out of it, because that too is a
Can't
distraction.
do it.
Yes, you can. So what
How you
You-
run for office
you-
if you take the labels away?
I'm talking about for the point of the discussion. If black people were to organize, if we were to organize ourselves together and not attach ourselves to the quote unquote slate of Democrats and say, well, wait a minute, we don't like that slate because that slate hasn't delivered to us. So we got our own slate that we're going to put there. Since you all don't want to deliver, then we are going to deliver up a different slate of people. When you are organized in that fashion, when we have our own political union of black people, then and only then will we be able to determine who is in an office and that they will stay there. And if they don't deliver, bye-bye. When we organize ourselves together in that fashion, then we will be able to really exercise political strength here in Cook County and Chicago and in the state of Illinois. And it doesn't matter what the letter is, because it will be black folks organized, and it will make those people who are in those political offices now view us differently and respond to us differently. It's not going to be the Republicans, and maybe it's not going to be these people here, but they're all playing us because we are going in all different directions. You're going in one direction, another group is going in one direction. We're all doing that. We're all doing that, and
Well-
we're all being played because we are doing that because we're pissed off at what is happening, and we're so pissed off that we can't get our heads together to say, okay, let's organize ourselves.
I don't think that that was a very good wrap up. But I don't think I'm being played. I think I'm playing back, and
Okay.
I will continue to play. And
Let's see what the outcome is.
personally, and I think the outcome's been pretty good for me so far.
Exactly.
And-
For you.
and I mean,
For you,
in terms of
personally.
what I want. Well,
For you.
personally,
not for our
and
people.
I think for our people, because I
How?
think we're making a point that our people are not monolithic, that our people will go the other way if you don't come correct, if you don't provide for us what we are providing for the party.
But you gotta-
the party again. But
You're talking
we've
about for the
been
party. I'm
providing
talking
for the
about for the
party
people.
for all these years, and the party has not provided for our people. We are getting the wrap up music. They're playing us off, Mark Wallace.
Time to go.
They're playing us off, man. You know how they do, you know.
Man.
Hey,
Boy.
we've had a great time this evening, as we always have at Intellectual Radio.
For the purposes of what?
For the
Get our
purposes
people
of
together.
what? Man, you know, we gotta wrap it up for the purposes exactly of getting ourselves together. And it's been another good night at
Fiery good night.
Intellectual Radio. Bro, we got to get out of here, right?
You gotta go.
Gotta go.
All right, Earl. Earl says we gotta go, folks. We'll see you all next week for another edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. Up next.
The man.